We have a whole bunch of climate activists in the studio. Somehow they made it into the studio, I don't know how, and they're on the bench today, all of them, and of course my panel. I've got Anita Soyana, she's a climate change activist. Philip Denzinger, he's from GIZ. I almost said GIZ, but is that okay, GIZ? Thank you. Linda Koske, she's from the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. And right next to me, Engineer Rugut. He's a refrigeration engineer and a whole bunch of climate change activists. Who else has a question, folks? This is your floor. You guys take the floor because I know you have a lot of questions. Scholastica, is that you?
Yes.
Go on.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. My name is Scholastica Omolo from NCPB, where we deal with the handling post-harvest management of grain. And I have a question for Engineer Rugut, and maybe the other panelists could help. Engineer Rugut, in your presentation, you told us that new buildings are required to comply with the requirements, with the standards, so that they don't emit gases that deplete the ozone. My concern is, are there standards in place that guide such kind of controls? And if there are, which standards are these and where are they available?
Engineer.
Okay, thank you for that question. I will answer it in two ways. For us, in the sector of cooling, we usually value the mechanical engineers' sizing of the rooms and sizing even the building itself and materials that they use, so that they are comfortable without necessarily external influence or external drive to cool the room. And these housing regulations or standards are actually available in bodies that govern construction, and mostly they rely on their architectural backgrounds and the needs of the clients. And so the bodies like NCA, the bodies like Engineers Board of Kenya, they add each type of regulation on different issue. So they all lump up to give the architect the direction to take in designing his buildings.
Okay, next question.
Okay. Good evening, all. My name is Masinjuki, and I am a trainer in refrigeration and air conditioning. And mostly, I've worked closely with the GIZ because of the industries, that is the technicians. And first, let me thank the Ministry of Environment through the office of Mr. Kirui, which have been so helpful to us. But now I'll ask a question that have been posed so much by the trainees, because at the end of the course or at the end of the training, we are left with a question, and one is the improper disposal of the refrigerants, which has been the key in affecting the the ozone layer. And the question is because the conversion from the CFC to the HCs, it is becoming a little bit hard because of the cylinders that we can use to dispose. And using the recovery unit, it is very expensive, because one unit probably could go like 100,000 to get a recovery unit. So meaning right now in Nairobi, maybe we have 2 or 1. Now this one goes to the GIZ and also to our ministry, because it can only be afforded by the companies. How about the Juakali? Those people who walk around doing repairs in the slums and also in the estates, they don't have the recovery unit to recover the old refrigerant, that is the CFCs, which are the R12 and the R11, which is totally out of market, so that we can have the CFC now in the market.
Okay.
How are we going to help them so that they can be able to get away, other than releasing it to the air?
Philip Denzinger.
Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, I mean, end of life is a very important topic and it's complicated. But what we need is, and what we try to do is also to give incentives to the technician, that he has an incentive to come and bring the old refrigerant. Because as I mentioned, if 1 kilo has an impact of 10 tons or 4 tons equivalent of CO2, it's a lot. And so on the tools, yes, I mean, it's, of course, those tools are expensive. That's why we donated through the ministry also to the associations, and so some recovery units and cylinders. But yes, we need more cylinders. We need to ban single-use cylinders and only have reusable cylinders, that any cylinder that is coming into the market can be used as a recovery cylinder. We need training to train those technicians, and we need, I mean, even if they don't have a recovery unit, if the compressor is still functioning, they can pump it into the outdoor unit of the AC, for example, and bring it somewhere. And then it could be recovered. Or, I mean, what we need is also that the end users, those who own the fridge or the air conditioner, are aware about that in that air conditioner is a lot of harmful substance to the ozone layer or to the climate. And I mean, we need extended user responsibilities and producer responsibilities, meaning those people that are importing and selling the equipment need to make sure that they also take the old equipment and it's getting properly recycled. And of course, we need funds and incentives, I fully agree, and educate all or train all technicians that they know how to do it and hopefully are able to also afford for the tools.
Yeah, but in the meantime, the Juakali guys, they won't be able to. Yeah, exactly.
Indeed, it's a challenge, but we have to also make sure that, because only trained and certified technicians should be permitted and allowed under the regulation to work on the equipment, sure. Because we're also dealing with substances in future that are flammable or that are having high pressure. So we need to formalize those informal technicians and give them also enough education that they can perform their job.
Yeah. Okay, up there, second row. Go ahead, Dave.
My name is Sharon from the Center of Environment, Justice and Development.
Sharon, could you speak up a little bit, please?
My name is Sharon from the Center of Environment, Justice and Development, and my question is to Madam Linda. At the recently concluded African Ministerial Conference on Environment, where African ministers gathered together to address issues of the environment that are key to Africa, there was little or no mention of ozone layer and its relation to climate change. So moving forward, how do we ensure that such a critical topic is addressed at such regional levels, and even how do we ensure to create awareness at the local level? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't addressed at all?
At all.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Georgina. So during the recently concluded, actually just week, in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, all the African ministers were meeting, and the theme was on land degradation under the convention. We have a convention that we call the United Nations Convention on Desertification and Drought. So the theme basically was on desertification and drought. To address now what she has asked, it is for us as member states or for African countries to propose the different thematic areas. Already during the AMCEN meeting, there was a proposal that in the next meeting, which is the ordinary meeting that will be held next year, in 2025, that we look at pollution issues. So when you look at pollution issues and the scope of pollution, then the issue of the ozone layer, the Montreal Protocol, and all these substances that deplete the ozone layer could then become a discussion. So the ministerial conference is usually held biennially, and there are different thematic areas. So I think now it is also time that we get to also have this discussion, and I'm sure this is going to take place in 2025. With regard to issues of capacity building, so this is one of those forums. I know in terms of the refrigeration and air conditioning technicians, the RAC technicians, a lot has been done, especially in terms of the trainings, because they're the people who are servicing this equipment. They're the ones who need to make sure that they're using the right gases when they're doing their servicing and and repairs, and therefore a lot has been done with the rack technicians. Now we need to do more, especially now with the public, in terms of their consumer choices, so that at any point when they're now making their consumer choices, they make sure that they look out now for the relevant standards, for example, the energy efficiency, so that the equipment that we are buying are also now compliant to the issues of high energy efficiency and cooling. With regard to the rack technicians, why it has also been very important to engage them. This sector consumes 6 terawatts of electricity per year, which is 7% of the national energy. So you can already see the impact of why it is necessary to engage the refrigeration and air equipment technicians, because of what this rack equipment are consuming, even in terms of energy. When we have good good consumer choices, as Philip said, then also in terms of saving electricity even in your own house, and of course now avoiding exposure to the harmful ozone-depleting substances or chemicals that are in your refrigerators in your house and that are in your air conditioning in your house. And Jeff, we have seen it mostly where we have air conditioners, air conditioning equipment. You find most of them are leaking. Yeah, so even in people's houses, in restaurants, in hotels. So,
what about the AC in my car? Is that also is that also part of it?
Yes,
Philip?
Indeed.
It's also affected, yeah.
In your car, you have 1 kilo 134A. That's an HFC. Has an impact of around 1.5 tons of CO2 equivalent. So you can fly to Europe and back almost with that refrigerant in terms of CO2 equivalent. And yes, and they are leaking. I mean, I lived in Africa many years, and I had to refill my air conditioner in the car, I would say every 2 or 3 years, depending on the number of potholes. And imagine, okay, the newer substances that are coming, they are HFOs. This is the newer generation of refrigerants, but they are not only, I mean, they have a lower climate impact, but we call them also forever chemicals because they contain PFAS. It's a chemical that breaks down to TFA. Sorry, it's too chemical. That is called forever. It has an environmental and health impact, a negative one. So this is the newer generation that the chemical industry is producing now. But as I mentioned, in the electric cars, we already have CO2 or also hydrocarbons in future for the air conditioning and heating system, because on average we can say they are around 15% more efficient compared to synthetic refrigerants, and therefore hopefully with electromobility we will have more natural refrigerants in the cars. But the influence is very little also for Kenya, because it's the global car industry that is actually defining what refrigerant is in the car. Right. And so yes, there is a huge impact on the mobile air conditioning. Also, 1 liter per 100 kilometers of your car is consumed by the air conditioner, 1 liter of fuel. So meaning there is direct emissions through the refrigerant, but indirect emissions through the fuel consumption of your car. On average, 1 liter roughly.
1 liter per?
Per 100 kilometers.
100 kilometers. Okay, second floor, yeah.
Kilusu.
Helen, speaker, please.
My name is Helen Kilusu, founder of Njilai community-based organization in Kajiado, an advocate also of climate change, and happy to be here. Mine is mostly related to what she had asked, but again, back to Linda. I believe it is 2 things. We have contributed to the issues to do with climate change. That is 1. But we are also a solution to climate change. So mine goes to her ministry because 1, the narrative out there, when you go to Kajiado, Turkana, so you can also agree with me, you can attest to that. When you go to Samburu, when you meet the old people, they have a different narration. They can tell you, why is it sunny today? And is it going to be sunny for the next 2 months or 4 months? So their narration is different. So what are you doing as a ministry to change the screen narration of what we can hear today, but make sure that what is being advocated out there, the old Maasai men from Turkana County, from Samburu County, are able to understand what climate change is all about. What Soine said earlier is that a percentage are able to tell you. But again, Jeff and Linda, when you go to the streets of Nairobi, just abruptly and ask a young person, what is climate change? They'll tell you it is climate change. So, meaning the message is not yet home. So, what is your priority as a ministry in terms of advocating for this term climate change? Why do we need to only wait until when drought is here so that we start sitting here and discussing about climate change? What is the priority for your ministry? Thank you.
Question. Very good. Linda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Jeff, I think a lot of efforts have been made. A lot of education and awareness has been done, not only through the ministry, but also through several other entities or organizations. Climate change really is a big topic. It's a big discussion, not only in Kenya, but the globe over. We have several forums where these issues have been articulated, but as you said, more can still be done, especially with regard to breaking it down in a simple manner to all the citizens so that they're able to understand. But I would also want to say, most Kenyans now are enlightened, especially with regard to environmental matters and with regard to climate change matters. They may not be aware of the term climate change, but when you break it down and discuss with them, and I think that is what Soina had also mentioned. In a simple manner, people have been discussing how the rain forecast has been changing, how the weather pattern has been changing, how we have been forced to change at what time we plant, at what time we sow, at what time we reap. Those simple elements have been able to show people that there is a change in the pattern of how our climate has been from many years back to where we are now. As we continue even to see the effects of climate change, I will give an example of how the residents of Baringo have also now been enlightened that they have gone to court because of the issues of the rising of the sea level in Lake Baringo. They have gone to court to say that because of the effects of climate change, they are now being negatively impacted because when there was a rise in the sea level, they lost their homes, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their cattle, they lost their land. So at grassroots level, people understand the impacts. They may not discuss the concept of climate change in the manner in which we are discussing it, but in terms of discussing the impacts, they are there. But again, more importantly, how then can people start adapting to the impacts of climate change, because climate change is already here with us.
Same thing is happening in Lake Bogoria as well?
Yes.
And I think Lake Nakuru?
Yes, and Lake Nakuru, yes.
All right, on the front row.
Good evening. My name is Jonas Mwangangi from Enchilai CBO. My question goes to the ministry. As we all know, most of the rural area people are poor. What measures is the ministry doing to make to prevent resistance to change? Because we know once new things are being introduced to people, they tend to resist. And another question is...
What did I say? Linda.
Yes, thank you for that question. I think such forums like the initiative that we have taken today in Jeff's show is just really to bring the message home and to give that education and awareness, and capacity building to let the public know. And I know that this forum reaches many people, including at the grassroots level. So that now public behavioral change is one thing that we are advocating for, but most importantly, consumer change. And that can only come also through knowledge. So while we keep on saying that a lot has been done, we also agree that a lot still needs to be done. And this one is not only for the government. We all need to work together in a whole society, whole government, whole society approach. The industry has a role to play. The partners, development partners have a role to play. The government has a role to play. And each of us as individuals, we also have a role to play. So working together, then we are able to address all these issues, whether we are discussing about green cooling, whether we are discussing about the impacts of climate change and how we are going to adapt to it. So we agree that a lot needs to be done. But then we also say that we need to work together. It's not only a ministry initiative, but we work together in a whole governmental society approach.
Second floor.
Okay, my name is Linda. Say I'm a researcher in the climate change space. I have a question, I think it's to all of us. It's basically how can we ensure we are localizing green technologies, or we are pushing for localization in the green cooling space, in the sense that we are sort of promoting local innovations, local communities in this conversation, in this push or in this transition for green cooling technologies, in that we are really living by the principle of a whole society approach in the whole green cooling space.
It's a good question. Anita, you're in that space. What do you tell, this is your generation. What do you tell them?
First of all, Jeff, when she asked the question, it rang my mind that I once had a chance to see a cooling machine that is, that it's a milk chilling machine. And when I went to the factory, I found out that it was owned by two young Kenyans who started the innovation while they were in university. And right now they've been able to sell to different farmers where they use it to carry milk, and they have been able to fit it, the ones that fit the normal boda, there's one that fit a truck. So I think what she's saying is right, that we need to also look at ourselves as solution givers locally. And even from what my sister from Enchilai also asked previously, it's because we tend to look at society or consumers as people who are just supposed to receive, or maybe to be recipients of certain changes, but not really as collaborators and stakeholders. So I can say we have local innovation. That is, Savannah Circuit is one of them, and they've also been able to produce machines for drying fish, for example, using solar and all those kind of things. They have been able to produce some machines that you can vend for vendors, that as they sell their things on the streets, they are also able to have them there. And it's chill on the go because it has the solar panels. So to jump quickly on the issue of community that was raised, I think we tend to, when it comes to speaking about community issues, there's no much intentionality, and this is coming from I can't say community itself, but even from government. Sometimes we don't see the intentionality. So you realize that we sit in rooms and design what we think is best for communities, but then we have to come back and ask ourselves, when it comes to allocation of resources, let's say for adaptation, are they really getting to the same communities? When it comes to the indigenous knowledge that they have been using for the longest time, are we tapping into the knowledge that they have? Are we going to them from a point of, we have come to show you what you need to do as pastoralists, you need to move away from livestock keeping to this? Or are we going to them and say, look, let us sit down and talk and discuss what we think is best for you? So I think that is what is really lacking most of the times. There is no that being intentional about really supporting the communities that are most affected, yet least contribute to the same. I was also recently in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, for the climate change development in Africa, the 12th Conference on Climate Change Development in Africa, which was on the sideline of the ministerial one. And some of the things that were also discussed, for example, role of parliamentarians and legislators in addressing these issues. So when we talk about policies, for example, they could be global, but then how do we localize our policies? That's where they come in. Are they capacity built on such issues? Maybe, maybe not, but larger percentage, most are not aware. So when it comes to allocation of resources for such issues that are very critical, they are the ones who allocate budgets. And then when it comes to oversight, then they're still the people that we depend on for oversight. So I feel that there is a gap when it comes to connecting scientists, leaders, community, and all that. Yeah.
I was in Kigali this past weekend for the Africa Food Systems Forum, AFSF, which is part of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA. And they were talking about climate change. Throughout, it was all about climate change, climate change, climate change. So it's on the tips of people's fingers. Front row.
Thank you. My name is Diana Tajo from the Ministry of Environment. My question is directed to Mr. Philip and Madam Linda. We've talked
You're from the Ministry of Environment?
Yes.
And you're addressing your minister, your colleague?
Yes.
Don't you see each other every day?
No, we do, but...
But you have a question for her?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a straight, short, simple
Go
question. We've talked about the transition into green cooling. If we could give Kenya a percentage, how well are we doing in this transition into green technology and green cooling? Yeah.
Linda, you first. How are we doing? Oh, engineer,
yes, I could come in and start on that, but I also have a response to, I think, Linda. We have a big opportunity, Jeff, in terms of green cooling sector. It's a very, very brand new field of opportunities. Recently, we have had Kenyans innovating cool boxes that are run from solar. I've worked in the health sector for over 25 years, and the big challenge in the health sector is the vaccines storage. Yeah. And we have rolled out very nice green cooling equipment for health sector run by solar. And they are also having other methods of keeping the vaccines. So our Kenyans, which we shall also showcase on Monday at our exhibition, we welcome many Kenyans to come and see on our Ozone Day. We have equipment that have been designed, manufactured, and rolled out to the market by Kenyans. So it's a very big space to work on. In terms of the transitioning of equipment, right now we have almost slightly above 30% penetration of the natural equipment, natural refrigerants equipment. Why do I say that? Is because the beverage industry are running the equipment of carbon dioxide. The milk chillers and the cooling and the processing factories are running off ammonia. And right now we have propane, the refrigerant type of propane, running our domestic refrigerators. And most of them, if you go around the statistics, it is almost 30%. And the other 70, which is being phased out, is also an opportunity for us, the engineers, because that demand for waste processing is growing. The demand for taking the refrigerant and recycling is also growing. And so the people who are really entrepreneurs can go into the circular economy, recycling products, using methods that are recommended so that the refrigerants are not discarded, but they can be recycled and used back in the industry.
Linda, before you go on and answer your colleague from work, you have a big event happening on Monday.
Yes, Jeff. We have a big event on Monday. It's called the World Day for the Preservation of the Ozone Layer. So this day is to celebrate the successes of the Montreal Protocol in regulating the production and consumption of these ozone-depleting substances. So it is celebrated every 16th of September every year. And also as Kenya, we also celebrate this day because we appreciate the successes of this protocol in dealing with the recovery of the ozone layer, but also in terms of dealing with potent global warmers, which are the substances that now we are dealing with or regulating under the Kigali Amendment. So this event will take place at the Kenya Meteorological Department, that is KMD, along Ngong Road, and all Kenyans are welcome to come and celebrate with us this day. So it's a global day, and it will be celebrated in the entire globe, but we'll also be celebrating it nationally.
Will there be AC?
It will be outside, so there will be no AC.
Okay.
Yes, natural air. Yes, natural cooling system.
All right, speak to your colleague.
Yes, I agree with what the engineer has said with regard to the 30% because of the transitioning that we are now doing. We are expecting that by 2025 we would have phased out the HCFCs, that is the hydrochlorofluorocarbons. But by 2045 globally, we are required to have phased down these HFCs. So we are looking for that either before that time or as per that deadline, then would have been able to fully transition into the natural refrigerants, but not only natural refrigerants, but also ones that have high energy efficiency.
Yeah. And
Yes.
Philip, you've worked in many African countries. Is this possible, or is this a pipe dream?
It is possible, but we need to start now. I mean, climate change is happening, and I mean, Kenya ratified the Kigali Amendment, and yeah, I mean, Kenya is quite advanced, let's put it this way, compared to other countries, because we've been working together for 30 years, and we got a lot of support from the German and also the French government supporting the implementation of the Montreal Protocol and other climate change projects, and therefore we are well prepared, but that doesn't mean we don't have to do our homework, and we need to start now if we want to achieve those targets. We have quite a high penetration in the domestic and commercial refrigeration sector. In air conditioning, we have started now jointly to introduce these green air conditioners. We incentivize the equipment. I believe, of course, regulation can play a role, awareness. I mean, if I'm a consumer, I go into the shop, I really need to check on the efficiency. It doesn't mean the product is more expensive. It could mean that even an expensive product is inefficient, and I need to make sure, okay, it has the right refrigerant, because then it's also more efficient. And I shouldn't just look at the retail price and say, so I should also look at how much does it consume over per year, and usually it might be slightly more expensive. Energy efficiency comes at a price, but it's paid off after a year usually, and then you save every day. And so what we try to do is develop jointly projects where we can provide incentives to incentivize the equipment that also lower income households can afford it, because I mean the poor are always paying more. The electricity bill of a low-income household is probably 80% is due to the inefficient refrigerator, and there we have to help them to also have access to this technology. And of course, we have the cooling action plan, and we have plans, and we need to implement them jointly. But it's the government; they need to push with green public procurement. But it requires incentives or just financing, access to finance that even lower income households can afford, and a lot of it is knowledge. And I mean, there's many aspects, but overall, I think Kenya is advanced, and we are. I mean, I work in 19 countries in Africa and also in countries in Latin America or Asia. I worked a lot, so I have quite a comparison, and I believe it's possible, but we need to do it.
Yeah, need to do it. Start now, like you said.
Yes.
Any more questions up there? Second row, yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Georgina from the Center for Environment, Justice and Development. And my question ties to what Ms. Anita has spoken to, and in reference to a phrase that Ms. Linda keeps saying, which is whole government, whole society. So my question is directed to Ms. Linda and Mr. Philip. What specific actions are the government and developmental partners, such as GIZ, taking to engage and include civil society and communities in not only the implementation, but also the development of these energy efficient and climate smart policies and projects? Thank you.
Anita.
It's what government is.
Yes. Linda.
It's more Linda and me.
Yes, I think I'll leave Philip to speak about the projects that we are working on together, especially with the GIZ. Yes, and Georgina has said rightly that I keep on talking about whole government, whole society approach. Appreciating that environmental challenges or environmental problems, but we like calling them challenges more than problems, cannot be solved or cannot be acted upon only by government, but we need to bring everyone on board. Therefore, saying whole government, whole society means government is involved, but also we have the other stakeholders, we have communities, we have civil society, we have the private sector, we have NGOs, and so on and so forth. And involvement of all this category of persons is not only at the implementation stage, but it's also at the time when these policies are being developed. So when all these policies, for example, we have the Kigali implementation plan, will be involving all these stakeholders. Already in Kenya, we have a multi-sectoral committee on chemicals and waste. And this multi-sectoral committee comprises of various ministries, departments, and agencies, and also involves non-state actors, civil society, private sector, community. So we are bringing everybody on board in these conversations at the point of policy development, but also at the point of implementation, appreciating that it is not government that mostly implements all these policies, but it is the rest of the stakeholders who implement the policies. And at whatever level, then that is the approach that that government has taken. So even with regard to the National Cooling and Action Plan that my colleague here has spoken about, then that is still the same approach, so that the policies that we are now looking at dealing with, because the National Cooling Plan is bringing the synergy between climate change issues, looking at the National Climate Change and Action Plan, the National Adaptation Plans, but also looking at, again, of all these issues that deal with cooling under the Kigali Amendment. And therefore, all these processes involve a lot of stakeholders. For example, to ratify Kigali Amendment, to get us where we are here, Parliament has to be involved, because then there's a ratification process in Kenya. We have a law that provides for how we're supposed to ratify. It's called the Treaty and Ratifications Act. Cabinet is involved. So approval from the highest level. Then Parliament is also involved. Then public participation is also conducted. And when doing public participation, then of course all stakeholders are involved. So there are many initiatives that government is doing, and government is involving other stakeholders, not only in this space to do with cooling and climate change and ozone depleting substances, but in many other environmental areas, biodiversity, chemicals, waste, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yes.
Philip, joint ventures?
Very briefly, yes. Thanks for the question. Of course, I mean, it depends always on the project and where are we working. Are we working on a macro level, or are we going into the field and doing solar cooling to cool agriculture products? But generally what we do is we do safeguards before a project. That means we check not only, I mean, we have stakeholder consultations with civil society, but also with industry and government, various stakeholders. We bring them together. It's a requirement, but we also look at gender aspects, for example, and design the projects in a manner that they're gender sensitive, or that we have specific activities, especially in that sector. I mean, most technicians are male, and we try to also get more females doing an apprenticeship, becoming a technician. So overall, it depends on the project, I would say, but usually our project design requires us to do safeguards and also to involve civil society and other required stakeholders to get, but it really depends on the project.
Yeah. I'm going to take one more question from the floor. One more. There in the far corner, yeah. Top.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Brian Kigame from Center for Environment, Justice and Development. My question goes to the Ministry and Engineer Gut. Talking of awareness, are there measures you have put in place to ensure that information on ozone and ozone depleting substances is incorporated in our school curriculum, especially in primary schools and high school?
Engineer.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, this is a very crucial question, because that is where the background of engineers and technicians is obtained. And I want to assure you that I will not go much to the high school, but for the TVETs and some of our tertiary institutions, we have really managed to assist them to revise their curriculum to include the natural refrigerants. And so several of these tertiary institutions have adapted them. One is in Kisumu, and one is in Nairobi, and one is in Mombasa. And so we know that our refrigeration technicians, those who are doing the courses to be technicians, they are also getting now the tips, and they are getting the curriculum to be good technicians. So we are actually involving the schools in those, in entrenching these new technologies.
Yes. now that engineer has spoken about TVETs, then I will probably just speak about the other levels. For example, now in our primary schools, we have environmental education or environmental studies as a subject in the curriculum that we have. That is government appreciating that environment is an important a subject to be taken at that level. And it is because when we start understanding at a young age, and that is why we are teaching our children about education, then we start appreciating what our role is also as individuals in terms of contributing to environmental protection or conservation. So the issues of ozone depletion or climate change may not be at that level, maybe especially ozone depletion may not be at that level discussed in such a high level or in a technical manner, but we get to understand the importance of sunlight, the effects of sunlight, and all those kind of topics, which starts shedding light to our children on what really we are starting to discuss. Because at that level also, there's only a level of interaction that they can have with such topics. But it starts giving them awareness, it starts raising their awareness and also their curiosity, even as they're growing up to appreciate all these issues. But with regard to climate change, this has been incorporated in the curriculum. So this has been done, and climate change issues are already incorporated into the school's curriculum.
So if your CBC teacher asks you to bring your refrigerator to school tomorrow, is that okay? Yeah, so that he could check the HCFC, whatever that thing is called.
Probably they can ask you to go and see what is written in your refrigerator and come report tomorrow whether there's any issues of energy efficiency, or even take a photo. Yeah, because the energy efficiency stickers, for example, for the fridges are right in front of the fridge, so you cannot miss it. Yes. That would be a good assignment for information purposes.
Can I get credit for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
But you can imagine a child in Kajiado barely has food, has no refrigerator, has no phone.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's get some closing thoughts, folks. You guys have been a great... Give yourselves a round of applause. You guys have been excellent. Great questions, and you guys are great panelists. Let's get some closing thoughts going forward. We're talking about climate change and green cooling. Let's start with you, Anita, going forward. Talk to your generation.
Yeah, I think first of all is to appreciate what GIZ is doing, and of course in partnership with the ministry when it comes to green cooling. But I think I will appeal to young people, especially to those of us who have platforms, to learn more about such issues so that we can continue to help in dissemination of the information. Because like Linda said, we are not going to leave it to them only. It's about what I can be able to do as an individual from where I am. So I think that's what I'll ask. But most importantly, to also continue to ask that as you continue to design such innovations that are really, really important, for even for our adaptation, let us also consider what works for the local and especially the rural, or maybe that person who is really in need of that. So that we are not talking about companies, we are not talking about just supermarkets, but we are also talking more about household levels. Bottom-up approach for this matter, not overall, for this matter.
Did you just say bottom-up?
For this specific issue that you know that involves the small household.
You're getting into politics, aren't you?
Not really. Just for this. Yes.
Engineer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chef. I will really launch an appeal to my sector, because my sector is really diverse and is present everywhere. We have a team of technicians and engineers, and we have tried to bring ourselves together using an association of refrigeration technicians. We call it HEVA Kenya, and we have our offices in Nairobi, and innovations are just amazing. There are so many innovations, there are so many opportunities. We would like to urge the public that we now have a center that can collect refrigerators that are no longer being used, and they will be disposed correctly. We also have now about 1,000 technicians who have been trained on this green cooling, and not necessarily green cooling, but the natural refrigerants. They can handle them, and they have an identification in form of a certificate that they have been trained. So we have been urging them to stick together so that we can form a regulation of our profession, so that when we give a decision or we give a proposal to the building community, they will give us an ear. And then the innovation sector, cooling is still a wide open field. We need a lot of cooling in the food sector, in the agriculture sector, and also in the health sector. So for us who are looking for industrialization, the field is still open. And finally, our partners are not, GIZ is here in the forefront, and there are others also who have been coming in. We have the overall United Nations Environmental Program. They have been also instrumental in making us know where to get resources and where to get equipment, and also where to get information and data. So thank you. And the ministry has been our host, a very friendly host. All the technicians have really appreciated what the ministry has done. We have even included the technicians who have never had a formal education. Sometimes you see them in the street having a small cylinder with an injector, and they just refill your gases wherever they go. But we have also managed to go out there and open a training for them without necessarily selecting their educational background. And then last but not least, us who are now advocating for these changes, we are appealing very much to the government to define transitional policies. When are we transitioning? And what motivates us to transition? Will there be incentives, as Philip has said, or not? Those are the things which will accelerate Kenya to be maybe in the forefront of this implementation of Kigali Amendment.
All right. You. Philip Dinsinger.
Yes, thanks a lot. I mean, thanks to the 30 years of cooperation in that sector we're having with the ministry, but also with NEMA and with the industry, and thanks to all the technicians that are doing a great job. I believe, I hope, and thanks to you for this opportunity, I hope we raised awareness that this sector has a huge impact. It's very important, as we heard, when it comes to health, when it comes to hunger, to comfort. You can't work or study in an environment where you have 35 degrees or whatever. So it gets more and more important with rising temperatures. But also when we look at energy consumption, it is quite, we're talking about now 7% in of total energy consumption for cooling and air conditioning. In 2030, it will be 13% already. So it's growing significant. There should be a right or access to cooling. But we also need to make sure that it's the green cooling, and therefore, and I think it's a win-win opportunity, because if there's enough fairness, if the businesses and also the households are purchasing the right equipment and we have the right regulation, then we save electricity, we save CO2 emissions, and we save cost. And this should be the objective. And so let's try to work together, all of us, the industry, the government, but also the civil society, to educate and to raise awareness and to make the world a better place, and to have, hopefully, soon only green cooling appliances. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip. Linda Koske, you got the last word.
Thank you, Jeff. The government, through the Ministry of Environment, is committed to putting in place the necessary policies and also implementing the policies, adopting the whole government, whole society approach, bringing all stakeholders together. On the issue of green cooling, we are urging the public to adopt best consumer practices, so that when at the time of purchase of this equipment, as much as possible, to go for those that have the natural refrigerants and high energy efficiency. When you look at the issue of the emissions from the RAC sector, refrigeration and air equipment, we have 4 million tons per year, emissions being released. That really tells us of what is happening to our environment in terms of the emissions. Through the policies that the government has put in place and through the global cooperation under the Montreal Protocol and especially Kigali Amendment, we can reduce global warming by 0.5% by 2100. So that really tells us that ozone is life. We need the ozone layer so that we can be able to have life, because it will protect us from the harmful ultraviolet rays, but also it will help us deal with the issue of climate change in terms of 0.5 reduction by 2100. So we are committed as a ministry to continue working with our partners. We have worked with them very well, the GIZ and other partners who are not represented here. We have worked very well with the Association of RAC technicians and HEVAC. We have also worked with other ministries, departments and agencies who are not here, and we are committed to continue implementing the necessary policies that government has put in place.
Did you say 2100?
2100.
Are you going to be around?
For the future generations.
Oh, okay.
We are not only thinking about the current generation.
It's for these people.
But also for the future generation, yes.
Engineer Joseph Ragut, Linda Koskei, Philip Denzinger, and Anita Soina. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for enlightening us on this very important topic. And the audience of climate advocates, thank you so much for your time. I know it's late, I know you're tired, but you know, I hope it's been worth it for you. And I hope it's been worth it for you all, learning this subject about climate change and green cooling. Very important. What are you doing about it? Like my panelists said today, it starts with you. What are you doing about it? Thanks so much for being a part of JKL. Remember, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. And they're all green coolant. Or cooling. Green codes. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Good night, good luck, and God bless a green Kenya. Thank you, everybody.